The Great Hall of the was the largest structure Princess had ever seen. Its crystal walls stretched upward for hundreds of meters, catching the light of three distant suns and scattering it into rainbows across the polished floor. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy had gathered here today. They came from worlds she had only read about in her studies. They spoke languages that sounded like music, like thunder, like the grinding of stones. And they had all come to watch her be rejected. Stood on a small platform at the edge of the Great Hall, she wore the traditional silver gown of an unmarried princess, and her pale blue skin glowed softly in the light. Her silver eyes watched the crowd, but she kept her face calm and empty. She had learned long ago to hide her feelings. A princess did not show weakness. She was the youngest daughter of emperor then ruler of the empire. Her people had controlled 100 star systems for 10,000 years. They were ancient and powerful. Other species came to them seeking alliances, seeking trade, seeking protection. And every generation, when a princess came of age, princes from across the galaxy would gather to compete for her hand in marriage. It was called the celestial betrothal, and it was one of the oldest traditions in known space. But knew the truth. She was the fifth daughter. Her older sisters had already married powerful princes from mighty empires. They had secured alliances that would last for centuries, was simply what remained, a leftover, a courtesy offering for some minor prince from some minor world. The first delegation to approach was from the Empire. There were tall reptilian beings with green scales and golden eyes. Their prince was named X, and he walked with the confidence of someone who had never been told no in his entire life. X looked at for exactly 3 seconds. Then he turned to speak with his advisors in a voice just loud enough for her to hear. The fifth daughter, this is an insult. We came for Princess Ra, not this child. She has no political value. Her bloodline connection to the throne is too distant. He walked away without another glance. Kept her face still. She had expected this. She had prepared herself for this, but knowing the pain would come did not make it hurt less. The next delegation was from the collective. They were beings with hard shells and many limbs. Their prince studied with compound eyes that showed no warmth, no interest, no recognition that she was a living being with thoughts and feelings. Unsuitable, he clicked in his strange language. The genetic compatibility studies show poor results. We will pursue the emperor's niece instead. And so it continued. Hour after hour, delegation after delegation. The warrior clans sent a massive prince covered in gray armor-like skin. He laughed when he saw how small was compared to standards. I need a bride who can give me strong children, he said loudly. Not a delicate flower who might break. The crystalline beings from the Shimmer Collective did not even approach her platform. The energy-based life forms from the void reaches passed by without stopping. Even the small, furry traders from the merchant moons shook their heads and moved on. By the time the ceremony was half over, 17 princes had rejected. Some had been polite about it. Most had not. A few had made jokes about her that sent laughter rippling through sections of the crowd. Stood alone on her platform, her silver eyes fixed on a point in the distance, her hands clasped in front of her. She would not cry. She would not run. She would stand here until the ceremony ended, and then she would return to her chambers, and then she would be alone, and only then would she allow herself to feel. In a far corner of the great hall, almost invisible among the grand delegations of ancient empires, stood a small group of beings that most of the crowd had barely noticed. They were humans from a world called Earth, representing something called the Terran Republic. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 60 years ago. They had only made contact with galactic civilization 40 years ago. They were new. They were primitive by galactic standards. They had been granted minor diplomatic status only as a courtesy, and most species considered them barely worth acknowledging. The human delegation consisted of 5 people. Their leader was a man named Daniel. He was 32 years old, with dark hair and brown eyes, and a face that had seen both joy and sorrow. He wore the simple gray uniform of a Terran Republic commander, and he had been assigned to this mission because his superiors considered it unimportant. Standing beside him was Lieutenant Cole, his diplomatic advisor. She was younger than him, with red hair and a quick mind, and she had spent the entire ceremony taking notes on alien customs and political relationships. "This is fascinating," whispered to Daniel. "The power dynamics alone could fill a dozen research papers. Did you see how the delegation positioned themselves relative to the... There's clearly tension there that goes back centuries." Daniel was not listening. His eyes were fixed on the young princess standing alone on her platform across the hall. He watched as another prince turned away from her. He watched as a group of alien nobles pointed at her and laughed. He watched as her silver eyes remained steady and her face remained calm, even though anyone with a heart could see that she was breaking inside. "This is wrong," Daniel said quietly. Looked up from her notes. "What?" "This, what they're doing to her. She's just a kid and they're treating her like she's nothing." Followed his gaze to the princess. "It's their culture, Commander. We're not here to judge. We're here to observe and learn. Their culture is cruel. Many cultures are cruel. Ours was too not so long ago." Daniel knew she was right, but knowing something was not the same as accepting it. He had joined the Terran Republic fleet because he believed in protecting people who could not protect themselves. He had fought pirates and rescued colonists and stood in the way of those who would do harm. And right now, across this vast hall filled with the most powerful beings in the galaxy, a young girl was being humiliated in front of thousands of witnesses. The final delegation approached Princess. They were from a species Daniel did not recognize, tall and thin with skin like polished wood. Their prince looked at her, tilted his head, and then walked away without a word. That was it. The ceremony was essentially over. No one had chosen the young princess. Daniel felt something shift inside him. A decision formed, solid and certain. "Commander," said carefully, watching his face, "what are you thinking?" Daniel did not answer. Instead, he straightened his uniform, took a deep breath, and began walking toward the center of the great hall. "Commander," hissed, "Daniel, what are you doing?" But Daniel was no longer listening. He was walking forward, past alien delegations that towered over him, past ancient beings who had lived for thousands of years, past species that could destroy Earth with a single fleet. He was walking toward the princess who stood alone. And the galaxy was about to learn something important about humanity. The great hall fell silent as Daniel walked forward. At first, the alien delegations did not even notice him. He was small compared to most species present. His simple gray uniform was plain compared to the elaborate robes and armor worn by alien princes. He looked like nothing special. But then the whispers began. "What is he doing? Is that a human? Surely he cannot be serious." Daniel kept walking. His heart was pounding in his chest so hard that he could hear it in his ears. His palms were sweating. Every instinct told him to turn around, to go back to his corner, to stay quiet and invisible like humans were supposed to be in galactic affairs. But he had made his decision, and Daniel was not the kind of man who turned back from a decision. Behind him, Cole was following at a distance, her face pale with worry. The other 3 members of their delegation watched with open mouths, not sure whether to be terrified or proud. Daniel reached the center of the great hall and stopped. He was standing before the raised platform where Emperor then sat on his throne. The Emperor was enormous, nearly 3 meters tall, with deep blue skin and eyes that burned like white stars. He had ruled the Empire for over 200 years. He had crushed rebellions and conquered worlds and made treaties with civilizations that existed before humanity had learned to use fire. And now he was looking at Daniel with an expression of complete confusion. "You," the Emperor said, his voice booming through the hall. "Human, why do you stand before me?" Daniel swallowed hard. Then he spoke in the clearest voice he could manage. "I invoke the right of courtship challenge for the hand of Princess." The silence that followed was absolute. For a long moment nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The entire galaxy seemed to have stopped. Then the laughter began. It started with the delegation. Prince X threw back his reptilian head and made a hissing sound that was clearly meant to be mocking amusement. Then the joined in, their deep voices rumbling with contempt. Soon, half the hall was laughing at the small human who had dared to step forward. But Daniel did not move. He stood with his shoulders straight and his eyes fixed on the Emperor, and he waited for the laughter to fade. Emperor then was not laughing. He leaned forward on his throne, studying Daniel with those burning eyes. "You cannot be serious," the Emperor said. "Your species has no standing here. You possess no royal blood. Your civilization is barely a moment old by galactic standards. You have no great fleet, no ancient lineage, no wealth worth mentioning. What could you possibly offer my daughter?" "I offer myself," Daniel said simply. "My word, my honor, my commitment." More laughter from the crowd. "This is absurd," Prince X called out from his delegation. "This creature is barely civilized. His people were still burning fossil fuels when my ancestors were building their third galactic empire. He is not worthy to stand in this hall, let alone court a princess." Daniel turned to face the prince. "With respect, Prince X, you turned away from Princess without a second glance. You called her valueless. You did not see her as a person worth knowing. You saw only politics and bloodlines and power." He paused. "I see her." The laughter died down. Something in Daniel's voice had changed the mood in the hall. He was not begging or pleading. He was stating facts. Emperor then raised a hand for silence. "The human speaks boldly," he said slowly. "But boldness alone does not grant rights in this ceremony. The courtship challenge is an ancient tradition reserved for beings of proper standing." "I have read your traditions," Daniel replied. "The ancient texts are clear. Any being with recognized diplomatic status may invoke the challenge. The Terran Republic holds such status. We were granted it by the Galactic Council 3 years ago. It may be minor status, but it is status nonetheless." Murmurs spread through the hall. The Emperor's advisors hurried forward, carrying ancient scrolls and data tablets. They whispered urgently among themselves, checking records and consulting databases. Across the hall, Princess watched all of this with wide eyes. She had stood forgotten on her platform while this strange human challenged her father, challenged tradition, challenged everything the galaxy believed about species and worth and power. And he was doing it for her, a princess that nobody wanted. She did not understand. It made no sense. Humans gained nothing from this. Earth gained nothing from this. This small man in his plain uniform was throwing away his career, possibly his life, for a girl he had never spoken to. "Why?" The chief advisor of the empire stepped forward. He was ancient even by standards, with pale blue skin that had faded almost to white. He had served 3 emperors before then, and he knew the old laws better than anyone alive. "The human speaks truth," the advisor announced, his voice heavy with reluctance. "The ancient texts do not specify species or power or wealth. They specify only recognized diplomatic standing. The Terran Republic holds such standing, minor though it may be." The hall erupted in protest. "This is an outrage," shouted the prince. "We will not compete against a primitive," Prince X declared. "The Empire refuses to participate in this farce." "Then you forfeit," Daniel said calmly, turning to face them. "As is tradition, any prince who refuses to compete against a valid challenger must withdraw his suit entirely." More consultations with the ancient texts, more reluctant nods from the advisors. "The human is correct again," the chief advisor admitted. One by one, The alien princes who had mocked Princess began to withdraw. They would not lower themselves to compete against a human. Their pride would not allow it. Within minutes, nearly half the suitors had left the hall in protest. Those who remained watched Daniel with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt to something that might have been respect. Emperor then studied the human for a long time. Then, slowly, he rose from his throne. He was even more massive standing up, a mountain of blue skin and ancient power. "Very well, human," he said. "You have invoked the challenge. The law demands that I honor it." He descended the steps of his platform until he stood directly before Daniel, towering over him. But understand this. The courtship trials are not gentle. They are designed to break princes who have trained for them their entire lives. They test wisdom, strength, and heart. Many have entered these trials. Many have failed. Many have died. Daniel looked up at the emperor without flinching. "I understand, Emperor." "Do you?" Then leaned closer. "You could leave now. No one would blame you. The challenge has already embarrassed enough princes to cause political problems for years. You have made your point. You could walk away with your life and whatever small glory comes from this moment." Daniel shook his head. "I did not step forward to make a point. I stepped forward because it was the right thing to do, and I do not intend to walk away." The emperor stared at him for a long moment. Then something strange happened. The corners of his mouth twitched upward in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Humans," he said softly, "such a strange species." He turned back to the hall. "The challenge is accepted. The trials will begin at dawn." As the hall erupted in chaos around him, Daniel finally allowed himself to breathe. He had done it. He had invoked the challenge. Now he just had to survive what came next. Across the hall, Princess was still watching him, and for the first time in as long as she could remember, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. The night before the trials, Daniel could not sleep. He sat in the small room that they had given to the human delegation, staring out at the alien stars through a window made of crystal. Cole sat across from him, a cup of something that was supposed to be like coffee in her hands. "You know this is suicide," she said quietly. "These trials were designed for beings who are stronger, smarter, and longer-lived than us. Some of these princes have been training since before humanity invented the printing press." "I know," Daniel said. "And you're still going through with it." "Yes." Shook her head. "At least tell me you have a plan, some kind of strategy." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "Humans are persistence hunters. Our ancestors used to chase animals across the African savanna until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. We are not the fastest species. We are not the strongest, but we do not stop. We never stop. That might work against an antelope. These are aliens with technology and powers we can barely understand. Then I'll have to be creative." Set down her cup and looked at him with soft eyes. "Why are you really doing this, Daniel? And don't give me the noble speech again. I've known you for 5 years. I know when you're hiding something." Daniel was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "When I was 12 years old, my sister was sick, really sick, and our parents couldn't afford the treatment she needed. I watched her get weaker every day. I watched people look at us with pity but do nothing. And I swore that when I grew up, I would never be someone who just watched." He turned to face. "I saw that princess standing alone while the galaxy laughed at her, and I saw my sister again. I saw every person who ever felt worthless because no one stood up for them. I couldn't just watch." Reached out and squeezed his hand. "Your sister, did she?" "She survived. A doctor eventually helped us for free. He said that sometimes you have to do what's right, even when it costs you something." The first trial was called the Labyrinth of Echoes. Daniel stood at the entrance with 8 other suitors who had chosen to remain and compete. Most of them were princes from smaller empires who saw an opportunity in the chaos caused by the larger delegations leaving. They looked at Daniel with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. "The rules are simple," announced the overseer. "Enter the labyrinth, reach the center, return. The labyrinth will test your mind, your wisdom, your ability to solve problems and overcome fear. You may bring any equipment you wish." The alien princes produced impressive devices, neural enhancers that would boost their mental abilities, scanning equipment that could map the labyrinth in real time, holographic computers that could process thousands of calculations per second. Daniel had a flashlight and a piece of chalk. Had wanted him to bring more technology, but Daniel had refused. "They have had thousands of years to design this labyrinth," he had explained. "Whatever technology those princes bring, the labyrinth will be ready for it. I need to think differently." The entrance opened, and the suitors entered the darkness. The labyrinth of echoes was not just a maze. It was a living thing, a construction of ancient technology that could read minds and create illusions. It showed each person their deepest fears, their greatest failures, their most painful memories. It whispered lies that sounded like truth. It projected false paths and fake exits. Daniel walked into darkness. Within minutes, he understood why the labyrinth was so deadly. The walls seemed to shift around him. Voices called out from the darkness, voices that sounded like people he had known and lost. He saw his sister lying in a hospital bed, dying. He saw his father's disappointed face. He saw all the times he had failed, all the people he could not save. The aliens' technology began to fail. Scanners gave false readings. Neural enhancers showed impossible paths. One by one, the suitors who had relied on their equipment began to panic. But Daniel had expected this. He placed his left hand on the wall and began to walk. It was an old trick, something humans had known for centuries. If you kept one hand on the wall and never removed it, you would eventually find your way through any maze. It was slow. It was simple, but it worked. The labyrinth tried to break him with visions and memories. Daniel acknowledged them. Yes, he had failed. Yes, he had lost people. Yes, he was afraid, but he did not stop walking. Hours passed. Daniel's legs ached. His eyes burned from staring into darkness. The chalk in his pocket marked every turn, every dead end, building a map in his mind. Finally, he saw light ahead, the center of the labyrinth. He reached it and found a small crystal there, glowing softly. He picked it up and turned back. The return journey was faster now that he knew the path. When Daniel emerged from the labyrinth, the observers stared at him in surprise. He was the last to exit, but he had completed the trial. 3 suitors had given up inside. 2 had to be rescued by the overseers. Only Daniel and 3 others had succeeded. Adequate, Emperor then declared from his observation platform, but there was something new in his ancient eyes. Interest, perhaps even respect. The second trial came the next day, combat. Daniel faced a warrior named Eth. That was nearly 3 meters tall and covered in thick gray hide that served as natural armor. His arms were like tree trunks. His hands could crush stone. The fight was held in an arena with thousands watching. The rules were simple. Fight until one combatant submitted or could not continue. Eth laughed when he saw Daniel. "This is my opponent, this small pink creature. I will try not to break him too quickly." Daniel did not respond. He took his position and waited. He attacked with terrifying speed for something so large. Daniel barely dodged the first blow. The second caught him in the ribs and sent him flying across the arena. He hit the ground hard, pain exploding through his body. Eth walked toward him slowly, enjoying the moment. "Stay down, little human. There is no shame in surrender." Daniel got up. They hit him again and again. Daniel was thrown, battered, bloodied. His lip was split. His left arm hung at a wrong angle. Every breath was agony. But every time he fell, he got back up. The crowd grew silent. They had expected a quick victory. Instead, they watched a small human rise again and again from blows that would have killed most beings. Eth began to grow frustrated, then concerned, then afraid. This creature would not stop. It made no sense, it all logic. And in his frustration, they made a mistake. He overextended a punch, leaving himself off balance. Daniel saw the opening. He was too weak for a killing blow, but he did not need one. He grabbed this arm and used the massive creature's own momentum against him, twisting and pulling with every ounce of strength he had left. Eth fell. Daniel was on him in an instant, applying a chokehold that he had learned in basic training years ago. The thrashed and struggled, but Daniel held on. His vision went gray. His arms screamed with pain, but he did not let go. Finally, the tapped out, submission. Daniel collapsed on the arena floor, barely conscious, but he had won. And somewhere in the crowd, Princess was watching with tears in her silver eyes. Daniel woke up in a medical chamber filled with soft blue light. His body ached in places he did not know could ache. Doctors had worked on him through the night, using technology far beyond human medicine to heal his wounds. He tried to sit up, but a gentle hand pressed him back down. "Rest," said a soft voice. "You are not fully healed yet." Daniel turned his head and found Princess sitting beside his bed. She was alone. No guards, no attendants, no royal protocol. Just a young woman with silver eyes and blue skin, watching him with an expression he could not read. "You shouldn't be here," Daniel said, his voice rough. "Won't this cause problems?" "I do not care," said simply. "I needed to speak with you." Daniel managed a weak smile. "Well, here I am, not going anywhere for a while." Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Why did you do this? The truth, not the noble words you spoke to my father, the real reason." Daniel looked at her for a long time. He saw a young woman who had spent her whole life being told she was worth less than her sisters. He saw someone who had learned to hide her pain behind a mask of calm. He saw himself, in a strange way. "Because I know what it feels like," he said finally. "To stand alone, to be told you don't matter, to watch everyone turn away." He paused. "And because when I saw you standing there with that look in your eyes, I couldn't just do nothing. It wasn't about politics or alliances or glory. It was just, I couldn't watch someone get hurt and do nothing about it." Silver eyes glistened with tears she refused to let fall. "Humans are very strange," she said softly. "So I've been told." She reached out and took his hand. Her skin was cool against his, smooth like polished stone. "The final trial is tomorrow, the trial of heart. No one speaks of what happens inside, but many who enter do not complete it, and those who do are often changed." "Changed how?" "Some weep for days, some withdraw their suits and never speak of it again. Some become angry and bitter. It breaks something inside them." She squeezed his hand. "I do not want it to break you." Daniel turned his hand over and held hers properly. "I've been broken before. I always find a way to put myself back together." The next day, Daniel stood before the entrance to the Chamber of Hearts. It was an ancient structure, older than the current imperial palace, older than most of the empire itself. The walls were made of black stone that seemed to absorb light. Only 3 suitors remained. The others had withdrawn after the combat trial, unwilling to continue against a human who simply would not quit. Emperor then stood before them, his face grave. "This is the final trial," he announced. "The trial of heart tests what no physical challenge can test. It looks into your soul, it finds your truth. There are no rules, no weapons, no strategies. You enter alone, you face yourself. Either you emerge worthy or you do not." The first suitor entered and came out 20 minutes later, pale and shaking. His suit without explanation and left the planet that same day. The second suitor lasted longer. When he emerged, his eyes were empty. He walked past the emperor without a word and was later found in his quarters, staring at a wall. Then it was Daniel's turn. He walked into the darkness. The chamber door closed behind him, and suddenly Daniel was no longer in a room. He was floating in an endless void, surrounded by stars that were not stars, by light that was not light. A presence spoke to him, not in words but in meaning that formed directly in his mind. "Human, Daniel, we see you." Daniel tried to speak but found he had no voice. Instead, he thought his response, "Who are you?" "We are the heart of the empire. We have watched over the for 12,000 years. We have judged 10,000 suitors. We have seen the rise and fall of civilizations. And now we see you." The void changed. Daniel found himself standing in his childhood home. He saw himself as a boy, sitting beside his sister's hospital bed, holding her hand while she slept. "You carry guilt," the presence observed. "You believe you did not do enough." "I was just a kid," Daniel replied. "There wasn't much I could do." "And yet the guilt remains." The scene changed. Daniel was in uniform now, standing on the bridge of a small patrol ship. Alarms were blaring. On the screen, he could see a freighter under attack by pirates. He was giving orders, doing everything right, but it wasn't enough. The freighter was destroyed. 37 people died. "You did everything you could," the presence said. "But they died anyway. You still dream of them." "Yes." "Why?" Daniel felt the old pain rising in his chest. "Because I should have been faster, smarter, better. Because if I had been better, they would be alive." The scene changed again. Now Daniel was standing before Princess, but this was not the real princess. This was how Daniel saw her in his deepest thoughts. A young woman who had been made to feel worthless, a soul that matched his own wounds. "You see yourself in her," the presence observed. "Is that why you stepped forward, for yourself?" "No," Daniel shook his head. "I stepped forward for her, because she deserved better than what she was given, because everyone deserves someone who will stand up for them." "But what gives you the right to be that person? You are not royalty. You are not powerful. You are not ancient or wise. By every measure this galaxy uses, you are nothing." Daniel felt something break inside him. The presence was right. Who was he? A nobody from a backwater planet that most of the galaxy had never heard of. He had no special powers, no ancient bloodline, no great destiny. But then, slowly, he remembered something. He remembered every person who had ever been told they were worthless. He remembered his sister, who had grown up to become a doctor and now saved lives every day. He remembered the trader who had shared food with him on his first deep space mission. He remembered a princess with silver eyes who deserved to be seen. "You're right," Daniel thought. "I'm nothing special. I'm not worthy, not by any measure that matters to you." The presence waited. "But worthiness isn't about what you are. It's about what you do. It's about choosing to try every single day even when you fail. I can't promise I'll always succeed. I can't promise I'll be the best, but I can promise that I will try every day. I will see her. I will stand with her. I will never make her feel alone." The void was silent for a long time. Then the presence spoke again, and there was something new in its ancient voice, something that might have been wonder. "In 12,000 years, 10,000 suitors have stood before us. Every one of them declared their worthiness. They spoke of their power, their bloodlines, their achievements. They told us why they deserved the princess." The void began to brighten. "You are the first to declare your commitment to earning it. You are the first to understand that love is not something you deserve. It is something you build every day through 1,000 small choices." Daniel felt warmth spreading through his body. "You have passed the trial of heart, Daniel. Go, and may you always remain this true." Daniel opened his eyes. He was standing at the entrance to the chamber. Emperor then was staring at him with an expression of complete disbelief. And then, for the first time in centuries, the ancient speakers throughout the hall crackled to life. "This human has passed the trial of heart," the presence announced to the entire empire. "His soul is without deception. His commitment is true. He is worthy." The hall exploded into chaos, but Daniel barely heard it. He was looking across the crowd, searching for silver eyes. And when he found them, he smiled. The day of the bonding ceremony arrived with 3 suns rising over the crystal spires of the light scattered through the ancient palace like liquid gold, and beings from across the galaxy gathered to witness something that had never happened in recorded history. A human was about to marry a princess. Daniel stood at the altar of bonding, wearing a formal uniform that had somehow found for him. It was dark blue with silver trim, the ceremonial dress of a Terran Republic commander. He looked small standing there, surrounded by towering priests and ancient artifacts that pulsed with soft light. But he did not feel small. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt exactly the right size. Stood behind him with the rest of the human delegation. She had tears in her eyes that she kept blamming on allergies. The other members of their team stood straight and proud, representing humanity at its finest moment. Across the hall, the alien delegations watched with a mixture of emotions. Some still radiated contempt. They had sent a representative just to register their formal protest, but others looked on with curiosity, even respect. The warrior clans had sent a message congratulating Daniel on his combat victory. They understood strength, and they had seen something in the human that they recognized. Music began to play, strange and beautiful, echoing through the vast hall like the voices of stars. And then Princess appeared. She walked down the central aisle in a gown of flowing silver that caught the light and turned it into constellations. Her pale blue skin glowed softly, and her silver eyes were fixed on Daniel with an intensity that made his heart stop. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was radiant in a way she had not been before. The sadness that had haunted her eyes was gone. In its place was hope and joy and something that looked very much like love. Daniel forgot to breathe, reached the altar and stood beside him. They faced each other, hand in hand, while Emperor then rose from his throne to perform the ceremony. The Emperor looked down at them for a long moment. His ancient face was unreadable, but there was something in his burning eyes that had not been there before. "When my youngest daughter's celestial betrothal began," he said, his voice carrying across the silent hall, "I expected little. She was the 5th daughter, the forgotten one. I am ashamed to admit that even I had underestimated her worth." He paused, and when he continued, his voice was softer. Then a human did something impossible. He stepped forward when princes turned away. He faced trials designed to break beings 10 times his strength. He endured pain and mockery and doubt. And he did all of this not for power, not for alliance, not for glory. The Emperor looked directly at Daniel. He did it because it was right. Then shook his head slowly. "I have ruled this empire for 200 years. I have seen 1,000 political marriages. I have watched alliances form and crumble. I thought I understood the nature of power." He smiled, just slightly. "This human has taught me that I still have things to learn." He raised his hands, and the ancient artifacts on the altar began to glow brighter. "In the name of the ancestors who came before us, in the sight of the heart of the empire, and under the light of 1,000 stars, I bind these 2 souls together. From this day forward they are partners. They are allies. They are one." Light enveloped Daniel, and warm and bright and filled with meaning that words could not capture. For a moment, Daniel felt connected to something vast and ancient, to the very fabric of the universe itself. And then the light faded, and they were simply 2 people holding hands, surrounded by a galaxy that would never be quite the same. The hall erupted in sound. Some cheered, some protested, some simply stared in amazement, but none of it mattered to Daniel. All that mattered was the woman standing beside him, looking at him like he was the most precious thing in all of existence. "Husband," said softly, trying out the word. "That is the human term, yes." "Yes," Daniel replied, unable to stop smiling. "And you are my wife." "Wife," she smiled back, that rare expression that transformed her entire face. "I think I like that word." The celebrations lasted for 3 days. Daniel met dignitaries from 100 worlds, received congratulations from species he had never heard of, and tried very hard not to embarrass humanity in front of the entire galaxy. But the moment he treasured most came on the second night, when he and escaped the crowds and walked together in the palace gardens. 3 moons hung in the sky, casting silver light on flowers that sang in voices too soft for most beings to hear. "I still do not understand you," said as they walked hand in hand. "You gave up everything, your career, your home, your simple life, for someone you did not know." "I didn't give up anything," Daniel replied. "I found something I didn't even know I was looking for." "And what is that?" Daniel stopped walking and turned to face her. In the moonlight, she looked like something out of a dream, too beautiful to be real, too perfect to be true. "Purpose," he said. "Connection. Someone who sees me for who I really am, not what I'm supposed to be." He reached up and gently touched her face. "I spent my whole life running toward danger, throwing myself into battles, trying to save everyone I could, but I never stopped to ask myself what I was really searching for. And now you know." "Now I know," he smiled. "I was searching for you, I just didn't know it yet." Leaned into his touch, her silver eyes gleaming. "Humans really are the strangest species in the galaxy." "Is that a complaint?" "No." She rose on her toes and pressed her forehead against his, a gesture of deep affection among her people. "It is a compliment." The news of the marriage spread across the galaxy like fire. Within weeks, the Terran Republic was flooded with diplomatic requests. Species that had ignored humanity suddenly wanted to meet with them. Trade opportunities, alliance proposals arrived by the dozen. Humanity was no longer a footnote in galactic history. They were a story, a legend in the making. In the council chambers of the Empire, Prince X watched the news reports with growing anger. "This is absurd," he hissed. "One human does one foolish thing, and suddenly they are the heroes of the galaxy." His advisor bowed nervously. "The people are inspired, my prince. They see the human as proof that worth is not determined by birth or power. It is a dangerous idea." "Dangerous indeed." X turned away from the screen. "But ideas can be crushed. In time, the galaxy will forget this human and his stolen princess." But the galaxy did not forget. Instead, they told the story to their children. The story of the human who stood forward when princes turned away. The story of the soldier who defeated warriors with nothing but stubbornness and heart. The story of the nobody who proved that love and honor matter more than power and prestige. And in the gardens of the palace, Daniel and walked together under alien stars, building a life one day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of love at a time. Daniel had asked her once why she thought he had done it, why he had risked everything for a stranger. His answer had been simple and perfect. "Because that is who you are," she had said. "You are the human who steps forward, and you always will be." Daniel had smiled and held her close. And somewhere in the depths of the ancient palace, the heart of the empire watched over them both, content in the knowledge that after 12,000 years, it had finally found someone truly worthy. Not because he was perfect, but because he would never stop trying to be.